you for coming tonight. Thank you for joining us tonight. So thanks to Bernie, who is, you see Bernie and is with us tonight, and he's been attending, and he is putting the website together for us. So thank you very much for that. It looks really good, and we'll be working more on it as time goes on. So thanks very much. It looks great. I think it's going to be a great thing, great resource.
Okay.
So if people have, thoughts about, things like, what to put on the website and so on, let us know. I think it'd be good to put the audio on there from the different prayers if you want to look up and find the right way to do the prayers and so on. So we'll have the lamas doing the prayers. And so it can be a good reference point for us all. Plus letting people know what we're all about and so on. So that should be good. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so why don't we get started tonight? We've got a few people with us, and the people coming in later will catch up. So let me see. So Emanuela, would you be the Umse tonight? Would you recite the opening prayers?
Sure, thank you.
Okay, great.
All right, everyone ready? Opening prayers. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Altruistic motivation. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Dagla dangwar je pedra, no par je pe gig, Darpa ding tam che kin pe bardu, cho par je pa tam che ki tso ji pe, naman manam ka dang nyam pe sem chen, tam che de wa dang den. Dung yao dang drel nur du la na me, Pad yang dag par dog pe chag chu, ripo che to parja. Action Bodhicitta prayer. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Deche du sang ma ge ki bar du lu nag, yusim ge wala kol, ma she bar du lu nang yusum ge wala kol, du de ring ne sum te ni ma sang da, tam gi bar du lu nag yusum ge wala kol. Long refuge prayer. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Idams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Idams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Drin Chen Sawa Dang Yu Parche Pe Pelden Lama Dampa Nam Lakyat Su Chiyo Yidam Kyu Korgi La Tognam La Kyab Su Chio Sangye Chom Den De Nam La Kyab Su Chio Dam Petro Nam La Kyab Su Chio Fag Pe Digen Dun Nam La Kyab Su Chio Pawo Kandro Chod Kyung Sung Mai Sog Ye She Ki Cheng Deng Dem Pa Nam La Kyab Su Chio. Taking the Bodhisattva vow. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Jang Chub Ning Por Chi Ki Bar Sangye Nam La Kyab Su Chi Cho Deng Jeng Chub Sempe Yi Tog La Yang De Shin Kyab Su Chi Jitar No Gi De Sheki Jang Chub Dug Ni Kyu Padan Jang Chub Sempe La Pala De Deng Rim Shin Nep Patar Dejindro la fendondu, Jacques Semi Kijijin, Dejindu ni la pala, Rimpa Jindu la pargi. Short refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chog dang chog ki chog nam la, chang chu bardu dangi kyab su chi, dagi jin sok ji pe so nam ki, dro la penchir sangi dru par shog. The four immeasurables. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam ka dangyam pe sem chen, tam che de wag dang de we gu dang, den par gu chik, dug nyao dang dug nyao gi gu dang dra war gu chik. Dug now ne pe da wa dang mi dra war gu chi. Ni ring chak deng ni dang dro we teng nyom la ne par gu chi.
Please do page 12.
Sagaramati requested sutra. Likewise be extinguished. Extinguish all enemies to my purpose. Whatever evil forces are in me, be defeated. Do this so that when I am victorious, all pure radiance melts into me completely purified. Take all this knowledge, food and drink peacefully, enjoy it and be satisfied so that all obstacles may be destroyed. Be liberated from all obstacles, all general obstacles. Mars are defeated by this gesture of the Buddha. By reciting this mantra, may all the Maras be purified. As a result, may all the Maras be defeated.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so yesterday we were concentrating on the practice of Shakyamuni Buddha. So today I thought it would be good to continue with talking about the qualities of the Buddha, the characteristics of the three Buddha bodies, and some other features here. So I'm looking specifically at the outline book that I think everybody has. And so I'm looking at page 40 and 41 in that section there. And I may be flipping back a little back and forth. So maybe we should look at that. Page 39, we should start with that. So this also goes with, if you have a copy of the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, we're talking about pages that are like 289 and so on in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. So this is great stuff. And, I think we're all, would like to think of ourselves as being Buddha, and we have that potential within us. And it's good to know what that potential means, what that is. And we will have moments when we will have a clarity of what that is. We will recognize that within ourselves. And so to be able to develop our confidence in what we're doing, to help us to stabilize our courage in doing this, as Gajah Rinpoche said on Saturday, the courage to be able to learn the practices, to do the practices, to meet difficulty, and the courage to be able to see it through, to be able to overcome all that is all part of what it is to be the Buddha. The Buddha is the result of all of that work that is done as a bodhisattva. Bodhisattva is the holy enlightened being. So we approach the Buddha by being a bodhisattva. So on page 39 of the outline, it says, why is one called a Buddha? So one who has fully awakened from the ignorance as from sleep and fully blossom discriminating wisdom into the two knowledges, the knowledge of the absolute and the knowledge of the relative, is called the Buddha. So the Buddha, we as a human being who have come through all these different stages of meditation and realization and so on, when we become stable in being able to recognize the relative nature, relative truth, temporary as it is, all in emptiness and so on, to be able to see that within the absolute truth, within the absolute reality, to be able to see that, we could say that we have attained a level of being Buddha. So Buddha is a Sanskrit word, and it means the awakened one. And in Sanskrit, or rather in Tibetan, we see that the word Sangye is how we say Buddha in Tibetan. So Sang means fresh, clear, and awake. And Ge means blossomed. So it's the blossoming of that fresh, clear awakenedness. So it's like coming out of a sleep. It's like fully blossoming, and with all this discriminating awareness into the two knowledges. So this discriminating awareness can also be said to be like the critical thinking, that as we as human beings who are developing critical thinking is a necessary part to be able to get to this liberation of any confusion, attachments, aversions, etc. So we see that the Buddha, Sangye, is the result of all of this, the awakened one. So it comes in a progressive path. We build on from one level to another and so on. And so we can have spontaneous moments of clarity, but they don't stay very long. But nevertheless, when we have those moments of clarity, it gives us great confidence that we are on the right path, that we see what is being discussed in the text and the practices that we're doing. We have a moment of realization. And part of our work is to stabilize that, to deepen it, to widen it, that becomes our normal consciousness. That becomes our ordinary consciousness, our ordinary mind, as we would say. So the three Buddha forms, the three Buddha bodies, are the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya. So we've referred to these words many times. So here you have a place to go where you can look at this and you can make notes and be able to begin to recognize these. The Dharmakaya is the highest form, and this is the absolute nature of the Buddha, and it's formless. It has no form. It's not a human form. It's not any kind of a form that a human can conceive of. It's totally formless, and it's desireless for one's own benefit. It has no desire for one's own benefit. So, so within this desireless, formless form is within our heart center. So we're not experiencing it with the brain. Our brain kind of can try and process that, but we need to be able to abide within that, within our heart center. So as we develop our meditation and so on, and our heart opens up, our heart center opens up, we begin to have this realization. We begin to have these moments of what we might call rigpa. That's not here in this text right here, but rigpa, R-I-G-P-A. Rigpa means the awareness of the phenomenal nature, as well as the awareness of the absolute nature. And we kind of are moving between that. It becomes like a oneness to us, but at the same time, while we're experiencing it, we don't recognize it. It happens after that rigpa comes after we have that event, because that realization is beyond any conceptuality. And the conceptuality is in the brain. So the conceptuality then occurs after you kind of come back into your normal state of mind, and you say, oh wow, I had those moments of that realization, of that freedom, of that liberation, of that understanding, of that wisdom. And it stays with us in the way that when we're quiet, that wisdom comes up. We can recall that wisdom, and we say, oh, here comes things that I didn't know before, I didn't recognize before, and here comes that realization. So we can have moments like that. There's a great book called Glimpse After Glimpse that was, they're excerpts from Sogyal Rinpoche's book called The Book of Living and Dying, which is his teaching on the Bardo Todal, or the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And so the book is this book right here, and it's got 365 pages in it, and each one of the pages is a day of the year. And so you can read each one, and it is they're extracts from the Book of Living and Dying, which are glimpses after glimpses of what it is to be in this Buddha mind, to be approaching the Buddha mind, on the stages of being in that Buddha mind, and so on. So it's a great book for affirmation of things that you might have recognized. It's a great book for investigation. You might be reading something that you hadn't thought of before, and it gives you cause to go and do some research. So this book is an excellent guide in doing that. I read this book every day for 6 years. And it was, I would read a page. Today's June, whatever the date is today, and I would read yesterday, and sometimes I would read tomorrow, and so on. That's the way I did it. When I first got it, I read it from cover to cover. And you can see what a great support this is for your practice. So it will inspire you in many different ways. So all this has to do with recognizing this rigpa, this awakened quality of seeing all this Dharmakaya, which is inexpressible. So this is the supreme worldly experiences, all the perfect powers, clairvoyance, and meditative absorption, and so forth, that are through the devotion to the Dharmakaya. So the Dharmakaya is experienced through our meditation. There might be some people who can intellectualize their way into that, but I think they would be very special people who have very special qualities and very special karma to be able to do that. But for the rest of us, we have to approach this one step at a time to be able to do that. And we have glimpse after glimpse of what that is. So lifetime after lifetime. So it'd be wonderful to expect that we could do this in a single lifetime. It can be done. We talk about some of the great masters who have done that. And you can read about Milarepa, who is the saint of Tibet. And so in his lifetime, he was able to attain enlightenment. And so it's well documented. You can read about him. So the second part, this Dharmakaya, is formless, is unable. You can't conceptualize what it is. But in order for us to be able to recognize it, it then kind of manifests. It displays itself in a Sambhogakaya form. This is called the enjoyment body. The enjoyment body. And it's done through the Nirmanakaya. The Nirmanakaya is the emanation body. So the emanation body, an example of the emanation body would be like Shakyamuni Buddha, who that Dharmakaya, that pure nature, Buddha Shakyamuni was able to recognize and to realize and to become the perfection of as a human being. And then he was able to teach it. He was able to talk about it. He was able to lead people in that direction. He couldn't give it to anybody, but he could teach how he attained that. So through his emanation, through the emanation of that Dharmakaya, you see, he was able to connect with ordinary beings so that we could see him, hear him, touch him. He could see us, hear us, touch us, etc. And so there was this interconnection that was being done with a real life Buddha. So we could say, many people would say that the Garchen Rinpoche is a living Buddha today. And if you've had the opportunity to meet him, it would be very difficult, I think, to deny that he has very, very special qualities. And if you could recognize what he recognizes, I think you would say that he is a Buddha. And so it's so that's very special to be living at a time, because there's many Buddhas, and Garchen Rinpoche is not likely to be the only Buddha who's alive at this time. There's been Buddhas before him, Buddhas now, and Buddhas after him, and so on. So we all have that potential. So the Nirmanakaya is the form body, that Dharmakaya, that non-conceptual, taking a form and being in the desire realm, being in the desire world for others' benefit. That everything that the Buddha does, that emanation Buddha, is for the benefit of other beings. So that's an important point, that everything that they are doing is for that. And there's a consciousness of that, which can be debated. Some people would argue that, but nevertheless, this is how the desire for the benefit of other beings would take place. So, so it's through that that the Nirmanakaya, the emanation body of the Buddha, is explaining itself, is giving us explanation, is giving us mind ideas or concepts that are the Sambhogakaya. The Sambhogakaya is the enjoyment body of what all this means, or what all this represents, this symbology of what all this is. So this is where all the iconography comes from. This is where all the different illustrations and the pictures and things like that, as well as all the mental pictures, the word pictures that are being used, and all the different the deities and so on, are characterizing these qualities that we all have within ourselves that we can recognize as being Buddha nature. We're not stable in them yet. You know, it's we have this impure body. The Dharmakaya would be the pure body. And we're approaching that. We are trying to get with that by way of studying and recognizing the Sambhogakaya, the enjoyment body. And we say it's the enjoyment body because here we are sitting on the cushion, here we are in our Buddha field, here we are doing deity yoga and so on like that. And we're recognizing this all within ourselves. So that enjoyment is very rich, is very heavy with the confidence and with the realization that is being characterized by all these different images and so on. So as human beings, we're going through the desireless, formless, we go through the desireless, formless, then we go through into that Dharmakaya. And as we do that, then we become more stable in it. So when we have meditation, when we're doing practice, we can remain in that state for longer periods of time and so on. So this needs to be experienced. You know, it's not something that you can intellectualize yourself, as I said a couple moments ago. So these are the three Buddha forms. The supreme worldly experiences of the three forms here are, number one, it says, obtaining the Dharmakaya is the basis for all good qualities. Strength, fearlessness, and so forth gather here as if they have been summoned. The second is all perfect powers, clairvoyance, and meditative absorption, and so forth, are through the devotion to the Dharmakaya. So this devotion to the Dharmakaya means that we are striving, we are yearning, we are working to purify ourselves in order that we can become a proper vessel to be able to recognize and to be able to hold this absolute nature, this Dharmakaya within ourselves. So there's a devotion. We talk about this as a devotion to do that. And everything else that we do becomes a subservient to that. That everything that we do then becomes an expression of the Dharmakaya, of the Sambhogakaya, of the Nirmanakaya, of what we're trying to do as the three Buddha bodies. Because, so it's our work, it's our relationship with our families, it's our relationship with strangers, it's whatever we're doing becomes that devotion. So therefore, being devoted to the Dharma itself is the highest way, is the purest way in which we can one-pointed mindfully focus on the mindfulness of what that is and be able to stabilize that more and more and more through that devotion to the Dharma. So number 3 here is obscuration and abandonment, meditative absorption, clairvoyance, and so forth. All the qualities of the hearer arhats are achieved by slight realization of Dharmakaya. So you've heard us speak of the arhat realization, of those beings who are on a path to attain liberation, but they're looking at it selfishly for themselves. And it is a step along the way, and that's an important primary step for us to take, because we have to develop this within ourselves, a recognition of this, in order that we may be able to process it and be able to help other beings, because that becomes the next step, is that we're doing this for the benefit of others. So the arhat is that primary step, that first step, doing it for ourselves to be able to understand that. So the Hinayana teachings, the development of the discipline, the development of practice, the development of being resolute, and all these different features that we've talked about and so on, are all comprised in that Hinayana, in that arhat. We could say that the arhat is the hero of that of the of the Hinayana, the hearer class, who is listening to the teachings but still has maybe some questions, some doubts, some concerns. Their motivation is their selfish enlightenment, their selfish enlightenment. But when they realize that their enlightenment also needs to include the enlightenment of all other beings, then that's taking the next step as a bodhisattva. So, so the obscurations, abandonment, meditative absorption, clairvoyance, and so forth are the qualities then of the solitary realizers, and the arhats, who are partial realization of Dharmakaya. So the solitary realizers, or the Pratyeka Buddhas. So the Pratyeka Buddha means the individual liberation, and they have achieved a great realization. They have approached and had experience with being Buddha, but yet they're selfishly holding on to that, and they don't want to share it. And perhaps one important reason why is because they are not totally absorbed with it. They haven't achieved the formless state of consciousness of that, and they're still holding on to what they think is the wisdom of being that Buddha. They think that they need to have that wisdom for the benefit of others, rather than letting even that wisdom go. Because remember, the Dharmakaya has no concept, is beyond concept, is beyond expression. So even that wisdom has to be liberated. So the solitary realizer, the Pratyeka Buddha, is still holding on to that, saying, oh, I need to continue to do this for the benefit of other beings. Because without my doing this, they're not going to get it. And that's a selfish expression. So the Pratyeka Buddha is characterized by their arrogance, their conceit, thinking that they are very important beings and they need to continue to do this. So that is their obscuration, but it doesn't become it's not an evil thing. There's a degree of negativity there because it hasn't been purified. But at the same time, it is of those who are very highly realized. So it becomes part of the process. The arhat is part of the process. The hearer is part of the process. The shravaka is part of the process. Then the solitary realizer, the Pratyeka Buddha, is part of the process. The bodhisattva is part of the process. So we need to learn what these all mean in order that we can become the embodiment of these. That we can be devotional Buddhists who are praying and who are trying to help other beings and so on, but to be on the path to be able to become Buddha and to help other beings, we need to be able to release these things. So in order for us to be able to release these things, we need to know what they are. So this is part of the Dharma teachings. So then the sixth point of the supreme worldly experiences of the Buddha Dharma forms, the three Buddha forms, the last one is the two form bodies are presented to benefit others. The two form bodies are presented to benefit others. The Sambhogakaya is shown to the more purified to the more purified trainees, and the Nirmanakaya is shown to impure trainees. So what that means is that the Buddha, when the Buddha lived, the Sakyamuni Buddha, many people saw him. Ordinary people saw him. Evil people saw him. People who were doing terrible things to other beings saw him. Everybody could see him. However, those who got onto the path of the Dharma teachings and so on, it was those who then got to that next level who were more purified trainees. And they were practicing, they were looking at the Sambhogakaya, that desireless form bodies. So we, as we are developing, go through that phase where we begin to see ourselves as Shenreze. We begin to see ourselves as Manjushri. We begin to do the deity yoga practices, and we begin to see within ourselves is this bodhicitta that is being activated, being actualized in these pure forms and so on. So those are the more purified trainees. So I hope that makes you can see the distinction there between that. The Dharmakaya, remember, is formless. This concept has no concept. So it displays itself as the Nirmanakaya and as the Sambhogakaya in order that ordinary beings may be able to approach this. So we say that the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya are servants to the Dharmakaya, because they are portraying, they are displaying those qualities so that we can recognize that. In the Dharmakaya, there's no form. There's, it just is. It's the suchness of what it is. So there's only words, similes that we can use to be able to try and explain that, but it has to be experienced, as we've said many times. Any questions or comments?
Hey Lance,
Yes.
this is Sarah. This is just a random note. I wanted to say, glimpse after glimpse, I have a copy from the lending library. Thankful to Adrian. I really appreciated you said something that made me smile. You're like, I've read it 6 times in a row, and I selfishly have been holding on to my copy before offering it up because I'm like, I've only done it twice. I'm on my 3rd round. And I kind of smiled when you said 6 because I'm wanting to memorize them, but I'm happy to lend it out. I love that you referenced it as you were talking about that because I agree with everything you said. So thank you.
Very good, thank you, and that's very generous of you to do that. But I would advise you to hold on to that book, or at least get another one if you give it away, and continue to read it periodically, routinely, because every time the seasons of the mind go round, you will recognize and different features of that book that you didn't recognize beforehand. So
yeah, you're right. You're totally right. That's why I like when you said 6, I kind of wondered, did it take you 6 times before you had basically light bulb moments with each passage? You're like, now I really understand through experience and knowledge what that person meant and that one sentence.
Well, I'm quite sure I could start reading it again and still be amazed and still find things that help me to purify even further.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a passing comment that I concur with that book is it's a gemstone book. So thank you.
Great. And just to point out, this is the way that we make our practice. We've talked about, doing these prayers, doing these opening prayers and reciting the 4 thoughts to turn the mind to the Dharma and so on. And it becomes this routine that we do. But you also can add your own features to this routine. like reading the glimpse after glimpse, or the 37 practices of the Bodhisattva. There's a lot of things that you can do, and you just need to do one little thing, like say just one line or one verse of the 37 practices, and that can stimulate your meditation for that particular session. So there's a lot of features that you can do. And it's a good thing to talk with a spiritual friend about your practice. We don't have to do it in this public format like we're in right now, but a one-on-one conversation, because sometimes, little tweaks will come out and so on, that when you're talking to a spiritual friend, they may suggest something, or you may say something, the light bulb goes off, and you do that. But if you keep it all inside, if you keep it all to yourself and so on, you kind of develop an insulation from being able to grow. You begin to plateau a little bit. So I encourage you to talk about your practice with spiritual friends, those who are on the path themselves.
Quick question, Lance.
Yes.
So I was reading somewhere that the Dharmakaya is all pervading. Is it in non-sentient beings as well? Like all pervading, I guess?
That's all pervading, isn't
Right.
it? Yeah, because it's non-conceptual. We can't even imagine what it is. Everything is Dharmakaya. We talk about this is the Dharma Dhatu. This is the realm of the Dharmakaya.
Okay.
It's everywhere, and we just don't recognize it. We see things in 3 dimensions, but we've talked many times, we've teased the idea many times that there's 4 dimensions, 5 dimensions, 6 dimensions, who knows?
So is that Buddha nature, or a version of it, Dharmakaya, or like
Well,
the
of course,
Buddha
that's what we're talking about
That is,
right here. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
I have questions about the Dharmakaya as well, and it's tough because it's all me trying to intellectualize something that's non-conceptual, I guess. But does the Dharma, I mean, I guess even calling it, but like have like qualities to it though, like intent? It sounds like there's like it has like again, I'm just gonna say it, but like it has like intent, like where it's like manifesting in a certain kind of way for beings like that. It does still have, it's non-conceptual, but it has certain qualities to it.
Yes, and we're going to get
right?
to that with the next page.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I think a mental image that I always use when I try and understand how this works is the image of the sun here in our solar system, and how that sun is just providing heat and providing light, providing energy that sustains our solar system with no expectation of anything coming back. That's its nature, is just to produce that light, to be that light, to be that heat, to be that energy. And that's a metaphor, I think, for this pure nature of the Buddha.
And the Dharmakaya isn't a foundational quality of separate sentient beings' own mind stream. In a sense, again, this is a
It's the
concept
essence of it.
It's the essence,
It's
but
the essence of it.
it's the essence of it, but it's not individuated. It's not like a Dharmakaya that I experienced. That's
No, it doesn't get individuated until we try and conceptualize
right.
it through the Nirmanakaya and through the Sambhogakaya.
Yeah. And it sounds, it's very, very similar. Not that I know a ton about this, but it sounds very, very similar to like kind of more esoteric, I guess, but like Hinduism with like, it sounds like Brahma almost. And then the manifestations are like very almost similar to like then the other kind of gods of Hinduism that are manifestations of like the formless Brahma. It's like all the dance of Brahma and everything.
Well, certainly.
Sounds very similar.
Certainly.
Yeah.
In Buddhism, we talk about, the historical Buddha is Buddha Shakyamuni, and all these teachings come from Buddha Shakyamuni and so on. But when we talk about in the Sambhogakaya, when we talk about the Dharmakaya characterization of, for lack of a better word, is the Samantabhadra or the Vajradhara when we talk about Dorje Chang, and that's like the primordial Buddha, so pure that it's unborn, because once it becomes born, now it becomes subject to all these appearances and interpretations of these appearances and so on. But this essence is so pure, and we characterize it by the image of Samantabhadra or Vajradhara. And usually, when you look at some of these images, these Tonka paintings and so on, you'll see at the very top of the image is a small picture, a small image of a blue Buddha who is Samantabhadra. And we say that is the Buddha nature that is within that particular deity and is within us all. It's that essence.
So if one were to have an experience, and maybe in a sense we're always having the experience of the Dharmakaya, I don't know, but like you're talking about like this experience of Rigpa, and that's synonymous, right, with the Dharmakaya, Rigpa?
It's the awareness of that, yes. It's the awareness, yes.
The awareness of the Dharmakaya in a sense, or
Of the Dharmakaya and the phenomenal nature as well. It's the Rigpa
Right.
of realizing, the suchness of all of this.
Right. Okay.
It's very abstract, I know.
Yeah. And I mean, I could go down this path forever in ways that probably aren't helpful to me or anyone else. But and so when you are though having, and I guess Rigpa maybe is that differentiation, but of the Dharmakaya in a sense, or of Rigpa, there's nothing reflective in the experience where you're aware that that experience is happening.
Not
What you're
until after you slip out of that.
Right. Okay.
But then, we can stabilize that, and then we can take it with us. And that's being a realized being. For us ordinary being, when we first experience that, it comes in a flash and it goes in a flash. But the more that we have that experience, the more that we do meditation, etc., the more that we're able to stabilize that. And then we're able to take it with us, and we're able to articulate the path to that much more. And we're not just parroting the words that we're reading in these books and the words that we've heard from other teachers, but we're speaking from our own personal experience. And that is a huge difference. That is the gnosis. That's the gnosis of knowing what it is.
Yeah.
And that's what, when we talk about authentic teachers, I think that's something that we're looking for. There are teachers who are ordained, and they're qualified to be teachers of the scriptures and all this, and they've passed all kinds of examinations and so on, and that's all wonderful. It's great, but at the same time, there are those who have experienced this Rigpa, who have experienced this realization of the Dharmadhatu, of the Dharmakaya, and maybe they're not the best scholars. They don't have to be the best scholars, because the scholars looking at it from this scriptural point of view, from this articulated point of view. But the one who's having this experience is like the sun that is just shining. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't have to explain itself. It's just radiating. It's making things luminous. It is bringing brightness. It is, and that's why we say, that many of the ceremonies that we have are heart transmissions. There's vocalization is going on, the intellectualization of that, but the real power is from the heart to the heart of the master to the heart of the students. So again, this is something that needs to be experienced.
So it's possible to be having the experience on some level while at the same time engaging in phenomenal activity?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. I'll stop. It's too interesting, but thank you.
But remember, it's doing it in a pure manner. There's no confusion, there's no obscuration. It's just pure, it is just pure Dharmakaya. So it's like being in the presence of a great being.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for
Something else that kind of made me wonder. So so is it just one Dharmakaya? Just one, like the Dharmakaya? Is that even answerable or?
It's not answerable.
Okay.
I mean, because as soon as you say one, you're saying a concept.
Right, right,
You're qualifying it.
right. Good point. Thanks.
Yeah.
But we can say that the Dharmakaya there's an awareness to it, though. The lights are on in some way. Or is that even that saying too much?
Yeah. Anytime we try and conceptualize it, is it becomes, it's our human mind doing that.
Because I conceptualize it as kind of pure consciousness thing, which probably, again, it's just a concept, but maybe that's. Anyway, I'll think about all this. It's fascinating. It's not something I'm going to intellectually figure out anyway. So,
Well, this is stuff that people think about for lifetimes. Books have been written about this very topic. So and so the bottom line is to just relax and enjoy it and become that. And it doesn't require any speech. It doesn't require any action, really. But if we're called upon to help, we'll do whatever we can. But we do it effortlessly and with no selfishness. It is done for the benefit of all beings, with compassion, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. The bodhicitta. That bodhicitta is the essence of what all this is, you see. So that's been articulated by the Buddha, by Buddha Shakyamuni. That was, a great gift of being able to say, well, here is the Buddha nature in its essence, the bodhicitta. It's the way we experience it, and it's the way in which we actualize it. Okay, thank you. So now we go to this next page in the outline book, page 40. And it says here the 8 characteristics of the 3 Buddha bodies now. So here we have the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya. You see this in this block at the top of the page. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this. These should be mnemonics for you to be flipping out on in meditative concentration, So, there is, so it says sameness. In the Dharmakaya, there's this characteristic of sameness. As Emanuela just said, one nature. Is there that oneness to it? Yes, but remember, it falls flat because it's just a word. It's a conceptual word. But yet there's this sameness. There's this one taste. There's this idea of oneness that is there, but it permeates that. There is profundity, the characteristic of profundity, that as we are studying this, as we are reading this, as we are experiencing this, there's this profound quality about it. There's no other better way. There's a subtle but a ubiquitous quality about it. It's everywhere. Ubiquitous means, I think, something like it's everywhere. You see it everywhere. So there's this subtle, but it's everywhere. And then, so it's like opening up your eyes and seeing light everywhere. Everything that we see, all this stuff is just light. It's just being reflected light, and we're seeing all these colors and so on. But we see it as these solid objects and so on. but all it is just light that's exciting our eyeballs and exciting the brain and so on like that. But it's just like light. So that's what this profundity is like. So we say that it has a luminous quality because the sun is radiant. It's radiating all this light, all this energy, but then it's luminous when it hits an object, and that object like opens up, or the object becomes visible. We can see it. So we say it's luminous. So it has a permanence quality about it, that it is free and uncompounded. It is non-dual. There's a permanence to it. It is free. It is uncompounded and non-dual. So we use the word uncompounded quite a lot when we were talking about the 12 links of interdependence. We were talking about that. We were talking about the skandhas. We talk about the compounded nature of who we are as human beings, our personality and so on like that. But this Dharmakaya is uncompounded. It's free. And it is non-dual. So is non-dual another way of saying oneness? But that non-dual is cutting through dualism and cutting through it in a way that the concept of duality goes away. The concept of oneness goes away. So,
Lance,
yes.
does anything exist other than the Dharmakaya?
Well, we say in its absolute nature, it is all Dharmakaya. It is all Dharmadhatu. But in its relative form, many things exist. All this exists as empty of its own quality, but it is the display of the Dharmakaya. So another analogy would be like a movie camera or a projector. Does the image on the screen, really exist? It's just an image of, something that's on that film that's being cast upon by the light bulb and is shining through the lens up onto the screen. So like I said, all these things are food for meditation. This is what we think about. So then the next is oneness. So here's the word that we were talking about, oneness. So this quality of oneness, this characteristic of oneness, that it is indivisible. So we talk about going through and chopping through the duality, but this oneness or this indivisibility cannot be further reduced. It is the essence of all things. And that's, for us as human beings, that's just a total mind blower. And think about all the scientists and all the work and all the money, all the energy that they're putting in to prove where it all comes from. Will they succeed? If you look at all this and it's, the absurdity of it in my silly mind, that there's all this space and all this, all these incredible huge objects and so on, they're all in there, that we on the periphery of the center of what this appears to be, that we're going to figure this out. It's absurd. So we just may as well relax and just enjoy ourselves and not hurt anybody and not cause ourselves or anybody else any suffering. And just be able to relax our energy and not try and create something that it's not. And we begin to chase things. We begin to become attached to things. We become to have aversions to the things that threaten us and so on like that. So then another characteristic of the Buddha body of Dharmakaya is the perfection. So the perfection is that it is complete as it is. It is complete as it is. It can't be perfected any further than this. And then the next one is the purity that it is unafflicted. You know, we have all this anxious stuff, we have all these emotions, we have all these confusions and everything, but this characteristic of the Dharmakaya is completely pure. We are impure. But there is this purity that is the essence of what this is, that is beyond body, speech, and mind. And there is this radiance, which we've talked about, this non-conceptual, this radiance that is just light unto itself. And it has this it has this relationship to enjoyment. The relationship to enjoyment, the Buddha nature. And there's a great book that's called Uttara Tantra, which is translated as the Buddha nature, and it goes into a lot of detail about all of this, but finally it gets to the conclusion, to the end part of it, and it is that we just have to relax and just enjoy this, and allow the penetration of what this is to be our embodiment, or that we become embodiment with that penetration. So I want to ask Bernie if he has any comments on this, because Bernie has many wise things, many experiences, many studies, and maybe he has something he'd like to share with us on any of this.
Okay, well, you're talking about pretty much what can't be talked about, so I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm not Buddha and don't have personal experience of the Dharmakaya. I can just repeat a few things that my different teachers have told me along the way, and that, well, let me see where to start. The Dharmakaya, it's a big question whether there's one Dharmakaya for all Buddhas or each Buddha has a separate Dharmakaya. It seems to be the answer to both. The answer seems to be there's one Dharmakaya for all the Buddhas, but I could be wrong about that. But that's my understanding, which I understand right now. And the analogy is used as each Buddha is like when you look through the window out at the sky, you see the sky through each window, but it's only one sky that you see. So I would say the answer to, is it individual or is it one Dharmakaya for both? I would say the answer is yes to both and the questions, I really don't know. So as to, we're just talking about the Dharmakaya right now.
Yeah, let's keep it to that.
Generally, the Dharmakaya is also explained. There's these different levels of consciousness. The deepest level is the all basis consciousness, and when it's confused, it's the all basis consciousness. But when it becomes enlightened, it manifests as the Buddha wisdom. So basically, what you can imagine is that the Dharmakaya is the transformation of that base consciousness from primordial ignorance into wisdom. That's all I have to say right now.
Okay, thank you. So again, as Bernie just said, and we've said before, it needs to be experienced. And so you can use the jewel ornament as a guide. I mean, that's what the jewel ornament is meant for. So, you know, what I've just been kind of paraphrasing is from page 289 in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. So there's much more there to be able to spark more conceptual thought on your behalf. So now we come, yes.
Well, I have a question about, I don't know if this is in the teachings or not. When someone becomes enlightened or reaches Buddhahood or something, is part of the realization that they've always been enlightened the whole time?
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Yeah,
They just didn't recognize it.
yeah,
They wouldn't accept it.
yeah. And I'll say too, and I'm sorry for monopolizing everyone's
It's
time with so
okay.
many questions, but like, I don't know, for some reason I'm having like an emotional reaction to it
Of
in the way
course.
of that I wouldn't expect that I would. I think because I've spent so much of my life too, like and even still to some degree, like with this focus on all of the things that are wrong with me, like all of the ways I'm deficient. You know, it's just like, I don't know, so that there's something quite beautiful or something uh about it. I don't know why, but I'm having like some kind of emotional reaction in a way. I don't know. Maybe it's been a long day. I don't know why, but
Well, of course. And we could say that that's the ripening of karma. You know, that the causes, the manifestations of all these thoughts that we've all had, all these activities that we've all had, all these different things and everything, as they begin to ripen, you know, they ripen as flowers and fruit. And then we need to be able to sustain ourselves on those flowers and that fruit. It becomes food for us.
It's like an epiphany.
Definitely. It
I've
is an epiphany.
and that's happened to me and perhaps to many people throughout my life, where I've come to a point where I said, why have I been doing this for so long and not realized that it was not the thing to do
Yeah.
when it's now so obvious? So that happens to all of us who try to think about what we're doing or where we've been.
Yeah, and let it go. Don't try and hold it back, that emotion. You know, look at that emotion. You know, I've been with lamas, you know, Vajra masters who have been teaching on these kinds of topics and so on, with 30, 40 people in the audience and so on, and tears are coming out of their eyes. I've been with the Dalai Lama with 2,000 of his other best friends, you know, and he's giving a talking, and all of a sudden he starts crying, you know, and I was amazed by that. And then it happened to me, you know, that I'd be in a practice, I'd be doing something, and just uncontrollable emotion would be coming out as tears and so on. And it's amazing. And so that's the cleansing, that's the allowing the fruition of our emotions, the fruition of our karma coming up. Sometimes it's bringing a sadness to it if we're holding on, and sometimes it's a joy of letting go. Tears can manifest in any way.
yeah, and I think too, just on a practical level, what resonates with me, and I think is at least for me is an important thing. It can be a trap. Is it can turn very much into this thing of like so goal oriented, where it's like, okay, and whatever, maybe it's 100 lifetimes or something. I'm going to do all of these things, and then I'm going to achieve this thing. Like it's this other thing that I'm going to achieve, rather than it like being something that's already here that I'm, or that someone's like uncovering or something like that, where it becomes so, it's like another like ego goal thing where it's like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to accomplish this and I'm going to accomplish this, I'm going to accomplish this, then I'll be this special person or something, you know, like this kind of thing.
Yeah, well, you're right. That can be a trap, you know, and that's one of the things that we have to overcome. You know, that's exactly right, because it can be a trap, and our ego can get attached to that in both ways, both sides, with aggrandizement, thinking, oh, we're so great, or with poor state of well-being. Oh, I can't handle this. I'm not ready for this. I'm not qualified for this. The ego will attach to anything. So it's all about letting go. Okay, so this next set of things that we want to look at are the 8 characteristics of the Sambhogakaya. The Sambhogakaya is this subtle enjoyment body. So this is the Dharmakaya that is displaying itself with this images, with these vocabulary, with these, sayings, with these practices, this intellectualization of the Dharmakaya. Now, we're trying to articulate it, but at the same time, it allows us to approach it. But we're not gonna, as long as we hold on to the Sambhogakaya, we're not going to be able to see the Dharmakaya. If that makes any sense to you. But meanwhile, we have to ride on the road. We have to drive the car. We have to do all this. We have to have these mental images and so on, only to let them go. So here we're talking about surroundings. So the first of the 8 characteristics, the surroundings. So the surroundings are the Buddha field and the bodhisattvas. The bodhisattvas on the purification levels, that they're going through what they call the bhumis. And these bhumis are these stages of purification. So I've used the example of a spiral, and we keep going around the same circle. And we keep going around until we purify all the aspects of that circle, and then we rise up to the next level of the circle, like a spiral, and it's a smaller circle, and then we go up to the next level, and the circle itself between them, the pitch is getting smaller and smaller as we go. It's getting tighter and tighter. And it's said that there's 10 bhumis, there's these 10 levels that is the purification of the bodhisattva, the holy enlightened being. So this is our surroundings. This is all hell if we want it to be hell, if we let it be hell, or this is a Buddha field if we let it be a Buddha field and enjoy that. So it's our choice. And to actualize the choice means that we have to develop a mindfulness. We have to develop an understanding. We have to qualify things. We have to understand things. We have to study things. We have to practice things. It just doesn't happen just by our saying it's going to happen. We gotta cultivate it, because we've cultivated ourselves to get to where we are, to be in this hell or this hungry ghost realm or this animal realm, whatever, this human realm. We've cultivated that over lifetimes of repeatedly being here. And we could say that, we have suppressed our Buddha nature for the sake of our human nature. But now we're saying, okay, now I'm going to control my human nature. I'm not going to suppress it. I'm going to control my human nature to be able to see that it is a vehicle to my Buddha nature, to that true awakened awareness, that Rigpa. So that's our surroundings. So the field is the Buddha field. We're selecting this Buddha field, and we experience this through practice. To say, oh, this is all my Buddha field, but that's too abstract. It's hard for us to identify that. So through the practices of the deity yoga, of hearing the teachings, of hearing the words, hearing the qualities of those individual deities, then we begin to learn to visualize what it is to be that deity, to be uttering those words ourselves, it's mantra, and to be manifesting this Buddha field around us. And in that Buddha field are all the different characters, beings, and implements and things that we used in the practice and so on to be able to get us to that point. So the dorje, the mallet beads, the bell, the diamond, all these different things you see become part of that Buddha field. And then the next characteristic is the form. And the form are the enjoyment Buddhas themselves, these Sambhogakaya deities, where all these statues are representative of, all these paintings, these Tanka paintings and so on are representative of, and so on. So this is where, the Buddhism is so great because it's so rich in all this imagery and so on to help us to understand that. People get fixated on the imagery, and that becomes a problem. That can become a real problem. We can get very egotistical about that. But to recognize it for what it is as tools, that at some point we don't need the tools anymore. So all these forms, all these deities, recognizing the deities, and this is why, we're on Sundays, we're talking about some of these deities to introduce you to this idea of that this is all part of who we are and so on. And I encourage everybody to take the empowerments and to meet the lamas when they come to town, and make the effort to, if they're not coming to your town, maybe you can make the effort to go to a Dharma center where they are and be able to receive the blessings, because they're very powerful. And these are accomplished beings, no doubt. And so it becomes very inspirational, and it helps us to cross over. It helps us to see, oh yes, this is something that I am. So the form, and then the next one are the marks. So the marks, we talk about the 32 major marks and the 80 minor marks of the Buddha. So this is the physical Buddha. So if you have a copy of the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, and you go to page 454 to 456, these 112 marks, major and minor marks, are articulated. So it has to do with physical features and so on. I'm not going to go into all of them. It goes into characteristics of their activities and so on like that. So, some of them you're going to say, oh, yeah, I've got that. Or you're going to say, oh, I don't have that. Does that exclude me from being a Buddha? No, not at all. Because we all are Buddha, we all have that within us, and we're respecting Buddha Shakyamuni, and all this is coming from Buddha Shakyamuni. So we respect that as a living example of what this Dharmakaya is, of what the Nirmanakaya is. So the marks, then the Dharma as the Sambhogakaya, because it's the Dharma that is being expressed, that is being imaged in the Sambhogakaya. So we say that this is the Mahayana teachings, the middle way teachings, is the Dharma. It's not to say that the Hinayana is not Dharma, but when we get into the Bodhisattva and we get into liberation, we get into the finer points of emptiness and of the absolute and the relative natures and everything, and we're talking about the Dharma, we're talking about the Mahayana path, the middle way path. So these are characteristics of the Sambhogakaya. So much of the Sambhogakaya has to do with all these different Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and so on. But the next one in the Sambhogakaya is the activities, and the activities are the prophesizing of the enlightenment. That, we're saying, oh, if you do these things, this is what we were just saying, and it becomes a trap. If you do these things, you're going to have these results and so on. So these are the activities, but we're doing them for the benefit of other beings. This is what protects us from being selfish, from getting caught in those traps. We're doing it for the benefit of others. And we wouldn't want to harm others. You know, it goes to the practice when we talk about the stages of meditation, and we're talking about loving kindness, and we do the four kindnesses of the mother, and then to develop compassion, we talk about visualizing our mother in the 6 realms of suffering, the 6 realms of samsara. We wouldn't want to harm our mother. So in this way, our activities here are aimed at all beings as being our mother, and we don't want to harm her. We wouldn't do anything to harm her. And if we found that we were doing something that was harmful, we would stop immediately. If we found that we weren't expressing this quite right, and we were misleading or saying something that was resulting in more anxiety and more confusion, we would just stop. So our activities are for the benefit of other beings, prophesizing enlightenment, that we are working towards this liberation, this enlightenment, this rigpa. And the spontaneity of this, of the Dharmakaya, of the Nirmanakaya, of the Sambhogakaya, the spontaneity. It's like there's aha moments, you know, the light going on, you know, oh, there it is. And remembrances, you know, the deja vu. Oh, you know, all of a sudden this kind of fits into something. All of a sudden I recognize this. It looks a little different, but in my heart, it's the same. And I can't explain it. But yet I got that warm, fuzzy feeling. Maybe some tears come to my eyes. The spontaneity of that. We talk about this effortless, clear, crystal-like awareness, this pristine cognition. Pristine cognition. Cognition is to know, to recognize. And pristine means like it's unborn, it's perfect, it's pure, it's uncontaminated. Is this spontaneity, you know, that just all of a sudden is there, and it comes without any effort. You know, we talk about that when we develop our stages of meditation, they're very firm. We're going through these stages. They're very firm. They shouldn't be rigid, but they're firm. We're moving. We don't move to the next one until we are stable in the preceding one. And then we move to the next one, etc. And then we find that this process becomes more and more effortless. And then we get to that point of shamatha, of calm abiding, when just our mind just, our intellectual mind, that just rests. And then spontaneously, we have this experience of our Buddha nature, what we call our Buddha nature, our true nature. And all this stuff just all, it just all comes together. There's no real good words to explain it, but everything just makes sense. Everything to our intellectual mind. But we're having that moment in a quietude, in a non-expressive manner. And it's only after we come out of that, we come back into our ordinary humanness, that we say, what was that? How do I explain that to myself? How do I explain it to other beings? You know, so we come away with that with love. It was just love. I got no better words to explain. It was just love. Love that was coming to me, love that was within me. And with that was the compassion. That's the other side. And then there's the joy. And then there's the equanimity that everybody becomes the same. It's like we're all in the same boat. And I have compassion and love for everybody in the boat. So that's spontaneity of the Sambhogakaya. And then the last one is the naturally non-existent. the naturally non-existent, free from the nature of diversity, free from the free from the nature of diversity. We talk about this phenomenal nature as all this diverse stuff, all these possibilities, all this multiplicity of things, and the freedom from that is the naturally non-existent. All this is empty of its own nature. It's all non-existent. We give it whatever degree of permanence that we do. But all that is just a joke on ourselves. We're just holding on to those images. We're holding on to those thoughts. We're holding on to those things and so on. And it's the liberation of that that allows us to go to whatever that enlightenment is, whatever dimensions that might be part of, or maybe it is the all those dimensions are part of that liberation. So that's the naturally non-existent. So we say, that, I'm just here for this period of time in this place, in this body, but I'm not sure how it got here, and I'm not sure where it goes when I leave, but it doesn't matter. But I see it all as temporary. I see all this world as temporary. And by practicing that, you see, we become more confident in that. And it becomes easier for us to let it go. And we have many reasons to want to hold on to it. We have our families, we have our friends, we have our jobs, we have our ego. We have all these things that are going to rationalize holding on to these things. But little by little, we begin to let them go, and we find that freedom that is a characteristic of the Dharmakaya. Any comments or questions? I see some smiles and I see some frowns. Okay.
Oh, I want to throw in a little bit.
Sure, Alex.
Actually, until today, I was quite puzzled about Dharmakaya. I was trying to rationalize like what it actually is. How can I grasp it? It seemed like very hypothetical, if you want, concept to me. Like what it would be, and then through your kind of explanation and maybe that can help others. Well, I mean, to me as a scientist and physicist and whatever, like, if you know about holography, this is when you take a light and send through something which you call like hologram, and there comes out like three-dimensional image of an object. So the object itself is not existent. It depending on light present, it depending on things, but what are those things? If you look at this hologram physically, like it's nothing special about it. You cannot describe it by words. It is some kind of arrangement of atoms, but it's a very special arrangement of atoms. So when the light goes through it, it creates these, beautiful images sometimes, can be even colorful images. And there is also a book called Holographic Universe that actually explains that like whatever we see in the universe can be viewed as some kind of manifestation of whatever, which is kind of projection through this hologram, so to speak. So So and then so now I'm kind of like mental have this analogy that maybe Dharmakaya is that something special which you cannot really describe by words. You cannot put in a box. You cannot break it apart. But as you know, what we call quote unquote light of enlightenment goes through it, activates it, we get that wisdom, we get that presence of Buddha wisdom, um, uh, of these teachings, you know.
Yeah, so it's like a rainbow. It's illusory.
Yeah, like a rainbow appears in the sky.
And we
A
use
rainbow is
that.
sort of a hologram, in
Yeah,
fact.
and we use that. You know, it's our
Yeah.
our illusory appearances, our illusory nature. All this appears to be, you know, permanent, but it's all illusory, like a rainbow or like a hologram. So we'll talk more about those things later on, and you know, but that's a very good metaphor, and to be able to try and, you know, conceptualize that what can't be conceptualized. It helps us to let it go. It helps us to see this this nature of stuff is all just contrived by the mind. And we just agree
Yeah.
that the color red is the color red, and we agree that the bell, this is the bell. We agree on these appearances, but they really don't exist unto themselves. They're compounded. They're atoms that are compounded into molecules, and the molecules are, you know, into substrates, and the substrates into crystals or into different forms of matter and so on.
Yeah,
So,
and another thing that I'm thankful for today is this clarification of Sambhogakaya. I was like confused that like why are we talking about enjoyment? I think we're supposed to, you know, not indulge in any pleasures. You know, why there is enjoyment party? And I think you pointed out that this is this peaceful presence that is enjoyable, but
yeah,
it's not like sensual pleasure.
right.
It is a more fine kind of state of mind, relaxed and easy, and it's certainly joyful.
Yeah,
Enjoyable joy. There is joy
yeah,
into that.
that's right.
So
Yeah, it's
um,
delivering us.
yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you. Well, I want to try and get through the rest of this section here, so that we're not left hanging, because I want to go through the Nirmanakaya. So the Nirmanakaya is the emanation body, where the Dharmakaya now is taking a form, and mostly we were regarded as a human form, in order to be able to teach us, to be able to show us, to be able to characterize, to become the embodiment of the essence of what this Dharmakaya is, that's being explained as the Sambhogakaya, you know, but now here is a being who's able to communicate this to us. So the qualities of the characteristics of the Nirmanakaya is that first it is the basis. So the basis is the Dharmakaya. You know, it is an emanation of the Dharmakaya. And the next is the cause. It is the cause is the compassion. It is because of the Dharmakaya. If we can think of that like as wisdom, then its cause is to help other beings to realize that Dharmakaya. So we say that the cause is the compassion for that. The Buddha has the compassion to be able to display itself for the benefit of other beings. And what we are learning, what we are doing, we want to be able to share that with other beings. We're regarding other beings as our mothers, and just as we want to be able to help and protect our mother in the 6 realms of samsara, we do the same for all beings. So this is our cause, is the compassion. The compassion is the actualization, the activity of the wisdom. So I know what this is. And now I know why it is that I want to be able to share this and how it is that I will share this is the cause, is the compassion. So then there is the field. The field of Nirmanakaya is the pure and the impure. So what that means is the pure and the impure. So the pure is the emanation body itself, is the Buddha himself or herself. And then the impure is all this other stuff all around it that it is in the midst of that doesn't contaminate it because it's pure. But this purity can have an influence on the impure to purify itself, to become interconnected with that purity. It's not so much destroyed as it is that it becomes more absorbed or neutralized or something like that. So we bring the impure onto the path of the purity. So that's the field of our activity. That's the field of the Nirmanakaya. That's what the Buddha is teaching us and showing us, that in the midst of all this, the Buddha still can get sick. The Buddha can still get injured. The Buddha can still see emotion and could possibly be affected by emotion, but his purity as is his protection against the corruption of the impurity. And it becomes an example of what it is to be pure. So that's why we say Garchen Rinpoche is an example like that, because he is a perfect example of that, at least in my mind, in my experience. And there's well be many others, but so then another characteristic of the Nirmanakaya is time. So time is the omnipresent. The omnipresent. Omni means all time. Omnipresent, that everything is here, that has always been here, and will always be here for that which we call the future. It's omnipresent. It's all here. And this presence, this location, is the same as everywhere. If I'm here, I'm everywhere. At this time, be here now. So time is a concept. Presence, location is a concept, is an appearance. So all this is in Nirmanakaya. Nirmanakaya is the emanation body. It's that Dharmakaya taking a form, in order that it may have the compassion or show the compassion for beings to be able to recognize their true nature. And their true nature is this emanation body and this enjoyment body, this Dharmakaya, this truth body, the Dharmakaya, the truth body. So then the next characteristics of the Nirmanakaya is nature. And the nature is this artistic birth, emanations, inferior bodies, superior, Tushita heaven is the nature of this. The nature is a word that we use to describe, the essence of what this is, the nature of what all this is. So there's an artistic quality about this. My being able to talk to you, there's an artistry in this. Some people can't talk their way out of a phone booth. Some people, but some people have a gift of being able to paint pictures with words. They have an artistry to that. Some people can play music, and they can pick up any instrument and they can begin to play music that tears will come to your eyes because of their artistry. And some people can take a plain piece of paper or a plain wall and a stick and some crayons or some charcoal or some paint and paint this gorgeous picture of so many different things because of their artistry that is trying to describe that which is permeating all of us, this nature. So this birth emanation, that we have this gift. We have gifts that when we're born, that to be able to do this, to have this artistry. Not all of us are terrific artists, but we all have our gift of life. And we all have something within ourselves that when we recognize that, we can allow that to come up. And we can allow that to actualize in our lives and so on. So we may have a inferior body that is subject to illness, subject to injury and death and so on like that, anxiety, all the mental illnesses, the neuroses that we go through, all this inferior body that we go through. But we also have this superior body within us that is this, when they talk about it as like a heaven, that we can manifest this heaven around ourselves, this Buddha field around ourselves, that we become our body becomes the heaven and the heaven is within us. There's many different ways of looking at that. So the practices talk about these things. Then the next one is engaging. In the Nirmanakaya, the engaging, and the engaging is the interest in the nirvana. The engaging is the education, is understanding what all this phenomenal nature is, and understanding what the pervading energy of what all this is. The spaciousness, the Dharmakaya, engaging in that. And this is requires the listening to the teachings, studying the teachings, contemplating the teachings, contemplating the practices, doing the practices, and then resting, and then effortlessly the meditation comes, which is the realization of our true nature, engaging in that progression of things to allow that to manifest. And then there's the maturing. This is part of the Nirmanakaya, the maturing that ripens with virtue. Non-virtue consumes our intellectual mind. We're always thinking about the non-virtuous things. Oh, I have so much fun when I did this. Oh, I'd like to do that again. Oh, I haven't done that for 20 years. Boy, would it be fun to do that again? And all these things, the things that we consume ourselves with is all this non-virtue, the 8 worldly concerns. Remember, we talked about that, So the maturing is saying, you know what? I'm going to give all that up, all that non-virtue, all that unwholesomeness. I'm going to give that up and I'm going to grow up. I'm going to mature myself to become virtuous. And then that virtue is like a protection. That virtue keeps us from those negative thoughts, those confused thoughts, those corrupted thoughts, and so on. So we begin to just automatically purify ourselves through our virtue by doing good deeds for ourselves and for other beings, and especially. So we're maturing, saying virtue is the right way. It may not be as much fun, but that fun was just leading me down the wrong path. And then finally, with Nirmanakaya is the characteristic of listening. Liberating. So liberating, when we are liberating, we're liberating into what we first call nirvana. this nirvana. If samsara is the ocean of suffering, then the nirvana is the liberation from that suffering. And the way in which we liberated was through this process of virtue, of giving up all the negativity, all the confusion, all the causes of that suffering to be able to liberate ourselves into nirvana. So the nirvana is temporary. As we are breathing, as we are living as human beings, we are vulnerable. And we always have to be vigilant as to what the corruptions are, how we can contaminate ourselves, how we can let things in, and so on like that. And we have tools to be able to do that. And we talk about that. We talk about, the afflictive emotions and how to recognize them. We talk about the mental misconceptions and how to purify that. And we talk about the habitual tendencies, which reveal some of those deeper things that we're talking about that need to be liberated. So we go through this process of liberating to nirvana, but this nirvana then becomes a permanent nirvana of Buddhahood. That's thus gone. That's the Tathagata. That's the Sugatas, the well gone ones, those who have crossed over not to return. They return as the sun is shining its light, its radiance for the heat and the sun, with no expectation of ever getting anything back from its radiance. So these are the 8 characteristics of the 3 Buddha bodies. And then quickly, I just want to say that there are special traits of Buddhahood. And I mentioned this because Matthew had brought this up. And there is equality. It's a special trait of Buddhahood. There is an equality. It sees all things as the same, animate and inanimate, human beings and animals and insects, sees everything as the same. There is permanence in the presence of the Dharmakaya, in the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya. There is permanence in those teachings, in the wisdom, in the skillful means. And there is appearance as a special trait of Buddhahood, the appearance. The Dharmakaya appears through the purification of obscurations, knowledge in the Dharmadhatu. And the Sambhogakaya appears through the purification of afflicting emotions. And the Nirmanakaya appears through the purification of karma. This is the appearances. So all this is in the Jewel Ornamental Liberation. This is all the result, the chapter called The Result, Perfect Buddhahood, chapter 20. So the Jewel Ornament of Liberation is a magnificent, priceless book of teaching from Gampopa that was inspired by Milarepa. Milarepa is the great yogi, and the yogi is the one who is in union with this wisdom and skillful means, bodhicitta, etc. And he requested Gampopa to put all these different teachings that were in Tibet at the time all together in one book. So this is the coming together of many different conceptual teachings and practices for our benefit. So for myself, if there's only one book, it would have to be this book. So, any other questions or comments? Okay. Thoroughly blown away? Buzzed out? I hope at least inspired. Bernie, you have any closing thoughts on this?
The only comment I would have is if people have a copy of the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, they should read the chapter
Yeah,
that you're talking from. So other than that, you're just pretty much following what the chapter said and putting it in your own words, really.
yes.
So yeah, just read the book if you want more info, if you want a different perspective on it. So
Yeah.
that's all I have to,
And put it in your words.
and try to understand what it says, in your
Yes.
own words, right?
And it's like, that spiral, it means this to me right now, but then 5 years later, it may mean something else or more to me. Just like, when I first read this 20 years ago, it means a whole lot more to me now than it did then.
Yeah, since okay, let me add one more thing, which has nothing to do with what you said tonight, but the first time I studied the Jewel Ornament of Liberation was before this book was even printed. It was with the translation by Herbert Gunter of the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, and it was with Trangu Rinpoche, and he would go over a chapter every day. So it was 3 weeks class. And of course, Trangu Rinpoche just recently died, which is why I mentioned that. That was the first time I'd met him. And I would have to say that I didn't understand the Mahayana Buddhism at all before I heard his teaching on it. And I couldn't understand the book when I bought it. But after his teaching, I understood most of the book. I understood what Mahayana Buddhism was for the first time.
Yes, thank you. Django Rinpoche was a great teacher, and I know he was your teacher. And
I wish I could say so. I think I only had 2 teachings from him, really.
I see.
So, but that was certainly a great start, to learn the Jewel Ornament of Liberation in one go like that.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, thank you, Bernie. Thank you
Sure.
for being here and everything that you're doing. And
So,
Bernie's been my friend for over 20 years and has been a teacher to me in many ways. And
what
I
the
deeply appreciate him.
first time we met, I think it was when we were doing the what do you call it, Nunye practice up at TMC. I think that's the first time we ever met.
Oh, maybe so.
So,
In the Lama House.
at the Lama House, we did the a weekend of Nunye practice, and I think it was the first time I met you. Maybe I'd seen you before, but
Maybe at the center.
the first time that stuck in my mind, really. Okay.
And it was hot that weekend.
It was very hot that weekend. It was
I
very
have a
hot.
picture of that on my wall in my office.
Yeah, that's great. We had a group picture afterwards, right?
So
So,
we could reminisce all night long.
okay. All I have to say, that's it for now. Okay.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Yes, Alex.
Yeah. Speaking about the book, I found there are many translations. Either is some that you prefer or you would recommend for who study Vajrayana or maybe our own lineage. That's one thing, and
You
the
mean
other
other books? You mean other books
other translations, I mean, or editions.
of
Or
the Jewel Ornament of Liberation?
yes,
Well, for me, it's only been this one. Maybe Bernie can speak to others because he knew the Gunter book, but I think this was very clear and very direct. And Kenshin Rinpoche translated this, and he said that he translated this word by word from the original text that he did. In other words, he did not embellish this. These were all the words of Gampopa. And in the introduction of this book, of this edition, Kenshin Rinpoche gives his commentary for each of these
so it is
chapters.
commentary.
So he gives his commentary, but as a separate part of this book.
I see.
and it is worth reading all by itself. So
Yeah,
Awesome.
I would agree that this is the version to get. I have not seen, I've seen 3 versions of the Jewel in a Minute of Liberation. I don't know that there are any more than that. This is the best one. It's the most carefully done until somebody does it again, maybe in 20 or 30 years. And I believe all the back notes, a lot of the quality of the book is from Annie Trinley's very careful editorial work. She worked on this very diligently, and a lot of the footnotes are her work.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
so
That,
yeah,
that that really inspires me to get that edition.
yeah, I yeah, I started studying it before the printed version was available. They had a loose leaf version in the binder first, and they would keep going through it after teaching it each time, and they would revise the translation several times. So it went through several different versions before it ever got printed in the book, which is why I said it was done so carefully.
and I'll
Thank
tell
you.
you that in 2012, Kenshin Rinpoche came to TMC in Frederick, Maryland, and he gave a page by page, line by line, word by word teaching on the Jewel of Liberation.
Yes,
It
he
took
did.
him 75 sessions to do that over the
Wow.
course of 3 or 4 months, whatever it was. No, 75 hours, excuse me.
Uh-huh.
75 hours. And it is available on YouTube if you want to watch that. I've got the DVDs of it. It's 20 DVDs. It's all in 20 DVDs, and
Oh,
somebody put it all up on YouTube. So because
good to know.
we asked him to teach this because we knew we needed Western teachers, we needed American teachers, and we needed authority to be able to do this. And he thought about it, came back and says, well, I'm going to teach the Jewel in the Middle Liberation in English for everyone, and it's up to you to partake of that. And several of us were there for the entire 75 hours.
Well,
So
thanks. That's a long answer that I anticipated, but it was a great answer. And the second question I had, you talk about the spiral that getting tighter and tighter or smaller and smaller.
yes,
And like when you say that, what do you mean? Do you mean time? Do you mean difficulty? Do you mean challenges?
purity,
Pure. Oh, so
purity, the purity. So we're going around in circles, and we're purifying our afflictive emotions, our mental misconceptions, our habitual tendencies. And as we get more and more purified, we get to the very top where the circle becomes just a point. And
oh,
then
I see. So at which point we don't really need to purify anything because you like
you become Buddha.
basically there.
The
Yeah.
next point is to become Buddha.
Yeah.
So that's explained in the book too. That's the 10 bhumis.
All right. Interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Well, thank you all very much for listening. And next week, we're taking off this week. This is the last one for a week. And then we're going to resume back again for Buddhism for Dharma Practice 101. We will begin again on the 26th. And we'll begin on the Sunday on the 25th for 201. So we'll get back into shape. We'll send WhatsApp messages out to remind everybody. But you got a week off, practice, read, contemplate, meditate, develop your practice. Okay, so let's see. Emanuela, would you do the dedication, please? So if you would begin on page 18 and go through page 22, please. So everybody, if you have your book, read along, recite along with Emanuela, and Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Great class. Good stuff today. Deep. All right. Dedication prayers. Lineage dedication prayer. Georgia Chang, Talopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dharma, Lord Gampopa, Fagmo, Drupa, and Lord Drikumpa, please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessing of all the Kagyu Lamas. By this virtue, may I achieve the all-knowing state, and may all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the causes of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind. Where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings. By the blessing of the Buddha who attained the three kayas, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging Dharma as such, by the blessing of the indivisible Sangha order, may the merit I share bear fruit. The Korma prayer. By the virtues collected in the three times by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Drinkumpa Rintashri, who is omniscient Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Dedication prayer by Lord Jingten Sungdon. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of Vedams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the three times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate root of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that, may I become spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong views. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such, and the pervading clarity of the Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, ah, hong. Om, ah, hong. Om, ah, hong. May my body, speech, and mind be inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Terrific. Thank you, Emanuela, and everybody else. Thank you for coming and being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Latch. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Thanks, Sense. Good night.
Thank you, Matt.